Bob for a very long time. I travel with Bob, so I can't tell you what kind of guy he is. And he joins us now. We've got to put a bow on his 2021 college basketball season. I'm sure he's relatively surprised. Robert, nice to chat. Good afternoon. How are you today, pal? Okay?
I'm feeling great. Feeling great. That was a little bit of a shellacking last night, wasn't it?
Sure was, Bob. Lots to do. Baylor we'll get to in a minute. Are you shocked that Gonzaga got blown out?
Yes. But on reflection, as I'm watching the game and I'm watching the energy level difference between the two teams in the first, 10 minutes of the game, it got me thinking, well, maybe the UCLA game did take a lot out of them. Gonzaga at the beginning of the game was running their offense but not trying to score. You know what I mean? I mean, they're just kind of doing their stuff and thinking it's going to come automatically. And meanwhile, they're running into a team that is, in their grill everywhere and not letting them get anything. And, they didn't have the energy defensively to stop the great guards. It was a blowout. And every time that during the course of the game that Gonzaga, tried to make a run, they looked like they were in mud. And they clearly didn't have it. And I'm not sure if there was any difference. Maybe if they had won by 20 points like Baylor did, would they have had more energy? I don't know. But it's a theory that I think is worth thinking about.
Well, let's do that for a second. Then we'll get to the relative development of the teams and the players themselves. All right, they beat UCLA. It goes into overtime. They score 93 points. They shoot 58%. Suggs makes the great shot. Game's over at midnight. Baylor, basically, They can take it easy at 6 o'clock because they're up 45-20 at the half. Drew can do anything he wants. Take it. He can have his guys in bed watching the end of the game and then get night sleep, and they can start Sunday. Now, you played the second game in 78. No, you played the first game. Did you play the second game or the first game?
No, we played the second game. We played
second game against Notre Dame, and Arkansas played Kentucky. So you played the second game. Is there in your eyes with these kids, does that play a big deal here? I know Duke used to think that hurt them against Connecticut when Calhoun won his first championship in the late 90s. He beat Ohio State. Duke had to work hard to beat Michigan State. Then, of course, UConn beat Duke. You think this is a big factor, the fact that UCLA game took maybe so much out of them? A big factor last night?
I think it was a big factor. And I think just emotionally, it was a very physical game. And what you're talking about is less time to recover than your opponent. But there's no way around that. And I think when you look at it afterward, it becomes more clear or reasonable to think that that was a big factor in the outcome of the next game. But that's not universal, and there are times we can point. You pointed to several, but there are several other. You could point it the other way also. So it doesn't always happen that way, but I think in this particular case, because it was such an emotional win, and because they were undefeated, and because they're this is, even if they don't want to think about it, it's in their face the whole time. And are you going to be Indiana 76 and run the table and then win the national championship undefeated? Or are you going to be UNLV and lose in the finals? Or are you going to be Kentucky and lose in the finals like they did in 2015? And, of course, they became the second of those choices. But in watching their energy level and from watching them this year, I didn't do any of their games, but I watched them on television. Their energy level was not nearly what Baylor's was. I mean, Baylor was they were focused, locked in, and clearly superior.
Now, do we want to sit there and say we underrated Baylor? We knew they had three good guards, but we didn't know they get 16 offensive rebounds. In hindsight,
No.
Did Bob Wenzel, forget me, Bob Wenzel, Steve Lapis, all the experts, did we underrate Baylor throughout that tournament. Oh, they haven't played that great, lost in the Big 12. Illinois got a good chance to get to a final, blah, blah, blah. Purdue's going to be
Yep.
dangerous, blah, blah, blah. Did we underrate the talent level of Baylor throughout the last 3.5 weeks? Did Bob Wenzel do that?
No, I mean, I always thought Baylor was the number 2 team in the nation, and they proved to be. They had that hiccup when they had the COVID. When they were cruising before that, they lost it. They lost to Iowa State, for goodness sakes, after the COVID. Okay, so that tells you the effect of quarantining and being away from the game. Iowa State's the worst team in the Big 12, and they lose, and they're the best team. So I don't think I underrated their talent, and I think it was just one of those things where, I mean, they were a superb team the entire year. Other than, I mean, the whole narrative was about Gonzaga nationally because they were undefeated. Well, Baylor only lost 2 games, right? So they had, they were pretty close. They're not undefeated, but they're pretty close, and they have, quote, an excuse, right, because of the COVID situation. So for me, all along, I thought that they were a great team and would be in the national championship hunt, and they certainly were. And I mean, it's you watch them play in that game last night, but you watch them play all season. That they are a juggernaut. I mean, they beat people. I mean, you can't run your stuff. I mean, Mitchell is in your face and won't let you go anywhere. And they are. I thought, I underestimated their rebounding ability, but because I thought some big teams might hurt them. But Gonzaga is not a great rebounding team, and they don't have depth in the front court. And, in this game, the 2 centers for Baylor both had 4 fouls. But and Timmy ended up with 4 fouls. But if Timmy had 2 fouls in the first half, like Suggs did, and they were both on the bench for an extended period of time, I mean, that hurts you. So I think Baylor's big guys are average when you think about the top big guys in the country. But I think they were plenty aggressive enough to take advantage of Gonzaga's lack of good rebounding.
All right, if this was a 7-game series and you saw this last night, would you chalk game 1 up to Lakers-Celtics 85 or the Memorial Day Massacre, and the Lakers just ran into a buzzsaw, they bounced back? Or would you chalk this up, geez, I got this series picked wrong, Baylor's not going to lose. I mean, they might lose a game, but they're going to win this series because they're better. How would Bob look at this if this is a 7-game series after game 1?
Well, I would, after watching that game and the data going into the game, there was a really a thing that made you think. Baylor, best 3-point shooting team in the country. Gonzaga, best 2-point shooting team in the country. And you say, okay, which one is going to win? Well, clearly the 3-point shot is omnipresent in college basketball and the NBA and all of basketball, frankly. So if you are not a team that can do reasonably well from 3-point range, you're not going to win. And for that reason, I think that sometimes you think the 3-point thing is going to come and go, but it's long distance. Not with them. And so I think that was very, very important. And I didn't see the final stats. I didn't look at the final stats. The game was over. But at one juncture late in the game, Gonzaga had made 1 3. And at that same juncture, Baylor had made 10. So now you're talking about the scoreboard. 10 threes is 30. 1 3 is 3. So they're outscoring Gonzaga from the 3-point line by 27 points. You're going to lose every game like that. I think Kispert, both UCLA and Baylor, did a great job defensively on Corey Kispert, who is really their only 3-point shooter. He's a catch-and-shoot guy, but he's physical, he's quick and all that. But he's not a guy that puts the ball on the floor like Mitchell. Mitchell, at the beginning of the game, made a statement. He came down, juked right, juked left, bounced it 3 or 4 times, and nailed a 3. And he said, okay, let's get it on. And Kispert's not that kind of a player. And so they took the best 3-point shooter out of the game. And so not having a balanced attack, you can't beat teams,
right,
of Baylor's caliber.
All right, so Baylor now, after you saw game one, Baylor would win a 7-game series.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They would beat boy. Here it is. We all thought Gonzaga would beat them in 5. So now the other way around. You think Baylor would win that series easy if this was in the NBA?
Well, not easy, but I don't think if they played, and it's hard to tell that about college teams. You refer to the NBA when we talk about these series of games. College guys don't play series of games, and they're not used to doing that. So it's hard to tell what they would do in a series of games. Would they make adjustments like NBA teams do? NBA teams play 48 minutes, and there's a 24-second shot clock. So the number of possessions is immense compared to the number of possessions in a college game. And so, the differences of how you guard guys at certain points in a game, I'm sure you've had Van Gundy on many, many times, and I remember talking to him years ago. He wouldn't put his best defensive player on the best offensive player on the other team in the first quarter because the offensive players are so good, they would score on anybody, whether it was your best defensive guy or your worst defensive guy. But in the fourth quarter, with 4 or 5 minutes to go in a close game, now you put your best defensive player on that guy. Things like that don't happen in college basketball. So it's hard for me to really project what would happen. But from watching Baylor all year and from watching Gonzaga all year and then watching that one game, I don't know if it would be more even if they had if you take out the UCLA situation and whether it would be more even. But I think not. By watching that game, Baylor is a much more balanced offensive team.
All right, now I want you to handle this now from a Mark Few standpoint. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
21. He's been there 21 years. I'm going to read you the stats, and you're going to sit there and say, Chris, I know that you love Few, so that's why I bring it up to you, and you're good with this. So I'm going to read you a few things on Few, and I can be sometimes. I think he's a little overrated. In 21 NCAA tournament appearances, his teams have only outperformed their seed 6 times. And 2 of those were in his first 2 seasons in 2000 and 2001, where that was Munson's team, when he was a 10 and a 12 seed. And another was a 9 seed when he beat an 8 seed. Only 3 times in the last 17 appearances has he outperformed his seed. So if you're Bob Wenzel and you're coaching Gonzaga, put yourself in Few's shoes. What do you learn out of this? What do you try to do better where you finally get over the hump and win a championship? Let me hear.
The early years of the tournament for him are in the last 10, it's 20 years with him, right? I think 20 years.
20 years. Yeah, 20 years.
It has changed dramatically. The seeds, when we think of seeds, we think that the higher number team is not as good as the lower number team, which in theory is the case. And years ago, that was the case, more so than it is now. The talent level has compressed. The top teams aren't as good. The teams in the middle are better than they were. And there's a couple of reasons for this, okay? The early entry into the NBA clearly hurts teams at the top. Kentucky and Duke weren't even in the tournament this year, right? Zion Williamson, R.J. Barrett should still be playing for Duke if this was back, right? Okay? They'd still be playing. So I think in the last several years, the early entry and the portal where kids can, essentially we have free agency in college basketball right now, where kids can transfer and play right away, and they're in the portal and, they test it out. Can I go somewhere else? So those factors make when we're victims in the sense that we look at these numbers when we're in the NCAA tournament, and we look at the seed, and it automatically triggers something in our mind where we say, boy, that's a lesser team. They're not really as good. Well, they're pretty close. It's getting closer and closer and closer. 2 years ago we had a 16-1, right, when Virginia lost. So that was unheard of for the duration of the tournament. So I'm talking around what you're asking a little bit, and I think that it would be harsh to say that Few has underperformed because of those statistics you brought up. I think in a one and done situation in an NCAA tournament, rather than a series of games like you're used to watching in the NBA or Major League Baseball, it's different. And a team can beat a team, and anything can happen. And so I would say that Mark Few has built a program. I would prefer to think of him as a guy who has taken a school that was thinking about going Division III, okay, when he got there. They were in such a bad shape financially. They were thinking of not even being in Division I, and taking them to the heights that he has taken them. I think has been one of the greatest stories in college basketball history. The other one really was Georgetown. When John Thompson took over that program, it was okay, but I mean nothing compared to what happened when he took over. So I would give Few a long leash on this issue.
Well, 21 years though, Bob. He's going to make the NCAA tournament every year. You've said that to me. You've said that to me every time you've been on this show for the last 7 or 8 years. You've always said that.
Yeah.
He knows he's going to make the tournament. He can pace his team properly. He doesn't have to get banged around like they do in other conferences. He comes in nice and fresh. And in 21 years, he's 0-2 in the final. He's only been to 2 Final Fours, and he hasn't won a championship. Now, you have to admit, he should have won one by now. Don't you agree?
No, I don't agree. I think it's so, and this comes from personal experience, Chris, as you know. I mean, when I was the assistant at Duke, we've been through this before. We made it to the finals in '78. We had the same team back the next year, and the following year we had most of the guys and maybe even improved, and we never got back. And I didn't feel like our staff or Coach Foster we were a failure in any way. Now that was a 3-year span, not a 20-year span like you're talking about. But stuff happens, A guy has appendicitis. Somebody's sick. Somebody makes a jump shot at the end of a game that shouldn't make it. You run into something where you have a bad game and another team has an unbelievably great game. Now, over the course of 20 years, I mean, how many teams? Other than the Blue Bloods, and we can't think of Gonzaga as a Blue Blood, how many teams get to 2 Final Fours? I mean, when's the last time Purdue was in a Final Four? Michigan State made it a bunch of times, and, he, Dean Smith, those guys, they were, Hall of Fame coaches that we talked about, and, at the time, people would say they can't win the big one. It's just part of the landscape. They had a great shot this year. There's no doubt about that. And they got nobody to blame but themselves. Baylor was a better team.
Is Timmy going to be a good pro?
I kind of, I'm back and forth on him, and I know that he is a really solid college player, but he doesn't look explosive. He looks clever. He doesn't look physical. He looks intelligent. He doesn't have the power to do in the NBA what he does in college, and I think we saw some of that in this game. I mean, Baylor used their 2 post players who are much more physical than Timmy, and they're not as physical as the kind of guys you're going to see in the NBA in the post. And I think defensively, he's not a factor, in the NBA. So I'm sure he can play in the NBA. I'm sure that, his offensive skill during the course of a 48-minute game, he's going to score points and so on. But it just doesn't seem to me like he's a starter on a team that's, going to the Eastern Conference Finals or anything like that.
All right. How about the 3 guards from Baylor? Are they all going to be good pros?
Yeah, I think Mitchell is going to be the best. I think he has the dribble pull-up game. He has the drive all the way to the basket. I'm physical. I can take you game. And he's got the 3-point shot. He has range. He shoots the ball very high, so his range is deeper. The guys who shoot the ball flatter, their range isn't as deep. And when they get to the NBA, they have to adjust their shot and shoot it because it's longer, and they have to shoot it higher. He's got all of that. And he's a tough dude. And defensively, I mean, he is really good. Suggs is, too, defensively, the Gonzaga point guard. But I think Mitchell's going to be the best pro among them. I think Butler is a guy who could play for years and years and years in the league because he's such a great shooter, and he's got a quick release, quick. Teague, not as much. I think Teague is solid, but he's not in the class with the other two guys.
All right, let's talk about Drew for a second. Baylor, and I know the broadcasters last night made this out to be the greatest resurrection job in the history of college basketball. 0-3 when he got there. And now, listen, Baylor can get anybody they want. This is not a scenario where they got to worry about grades. I'm not knocking Baylor, but that's fact. This is not Duke in 1978. All right, this is Baylor. Bob's laughing. This is Baylor. Is this, in your eyes, an incredible job that Drew did? Let me get a little feel about that for a second. Go ahead.
I think that it was a very, very, very good job, and they stuck with him. Okay, it was a mess when he got there. I don't know if you remember, but there was a shooting. There was
sure. I remember.
All of that stuff, and I mean, it was just really, really. And they're in a league with Kansas, right? And Kansas wins that league every 17 out of the last 18 years, something like that. Some incredible run. That was yes, he's done a remarkably good job. But it's not the most, in when you think of jobs that people have done, and I'm not tearing it down by any stretch. I mean, it was fantastic, and the administration stayed with him, and he got better and better and better. He adjusted to things as he went along. He took advantage of the transfer portal situations. I mean, he does a very good job of building camaraderie within the team, and not just this team, because that's easier when you're winning, but even when you're not winning or you're winning an average amount, he stays with it. He's positive, that kind of stuff. So I think he's done a very, very, very good job. And he comes from a basketball family, right? Comes from a basketball family. His dad was a fantastic coach at Valparaiso, I should say. Of course, about Drew, I don't even think he played high school basketball. His brother was a star player, right? But I don't even think he played high school basketball. So he learned the game, from his dad and from the experiences of his family, and it's his personality. Now, to be honest, there was rumors about his, somewhere along the line among the coaching fraternity that he wasn't doing things on the up and up.
I've heard that forever.
Yeah.
I've heard that forever.
Yeah. Now,
yes.
I don't know that that's true, or sometimes when somebody's having success, you look for reasons if you're the competition, right? So these things happen, and I don't think there was anything ever major involved with the NCAA where they came out and verified any of that. So I'm just bringing that up because of the conversation we're having about his building the program. So. I did a game at Baylor when Bliss, the previous coach, was there against Kansas in Waco, Texas. And do you know the soft drink that's home base in Waco?
I do not. What is it?
Dr. Pepper.
Is it really?
Is that one of your favorites? Is that one
no,
of your
it
favorites?
isn't. No, it's not.
Isn't?
But
okay. All right.
I didn't know that.
I thought we had a little something there.
You did. Where would you? Well, first off, the fact that Baylor got blown out. I'm sorry. The fact that Gonzaga got blown out last night, in your eyes as a basketball guru, does that take away from the brilliance of UCLA Gonzaga Saturday night?
No, not one bit. I mean,
see, it does to me. It does to me a little bit. It does to me.
Really? Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah,
no,
it does. Yeah.
I really do believe that took so much out of Gonzaga. I mean, look, they were undefeated until the last game of the year, and I know their conference isn't as strong as other conferences. If they were in the Big Ten or some of these other, the Big 12 or the SEC, the Big East, I mean, would they have been undefeated? Probably not. But that doesn't take away. They can't do anything about that. And I mean, it was a historically tremendous season for them. I'm not willing to say that Gonzaga is one of the best teams ever in college basketball. I think it's safe to say and accurate to say that they had one of the best seasons ever, okay? But that doesn't make them one of the best teams ever. That you think about the teams that before the entry into the NBA early, Jordan and Worthy, and you could go on and on with Patrick Ewing. You could with all kind of where the players were older in that era. So we're talking different eras when we try to put them into a framework of history, right? But I don't think it takes away from them. I think that
nor the game. You thought the game was, despite losing last night, that game in your eyes stands alone. Make a long story short.
Yes, it really does. It really does. It's Final Four history, right? It's not just NCAA tournament history. It's Final Four history. When we talk about the Leitner shot, and that becomes
but they won. But they won. But they won the whole thing. To me, right. I mean, when Fisk hit the home run again,
that shot wasn't in the Final Four.
No, it doesn't. But they won the whole thing. It was a regional final. When Fisk hit a home run against the Reds, it's a great home run, but they lost the next night. To me, when you have that epic game, Bob, it does help if you stamp it with a championship. I think you'd agree with that, correct?
No doubt. But I look at it from it's what you wear one hat where you're an analyst, you wear another hat where you're a coach, and you've been in locker rooms with players. And I mean, the locker room afterwards, is when they lost, had to be a terrible, terrible thing for those players. And it's your job as the coach to try to give some perspective to it. And that's hard to do. And it may fall on deaf ears when you first say it to the players, but a week from now, or a month from now, or a year from now, or 20 years from now, they'll hear that and feel better about themselves. They had a remarkable year. I mean, they really had a remarkable year.
Great job for you, Robert. Thanks for all the help. We will talk to you soon. You did a great job as usual. We'll keep in touch. Appreciate you coming on here today.
Great to talk to you, my friend. Enjoy baseball.
You do, Mr. Wenzel. We'll get Steve Torrey's thoughts on this after a quick break. We're on Mad Dog Unleashed.